She poses as a teen online and online seduces what she believes to be another teen. Pictured here, this is the photo he used online. He's actually a 46-year-old Sunday school teacher, a father of two.
Many people have delved into the fantasy of online romance at some time in their lives. For the most part, it's just a mere distraction from reality, an escape from the harsh realities of real life. After all, what could be the worst that could come from online dating? But what if I told you that you could even lose your life in a cunning cyber web of lies? Welcome to Mysterious 7, where we shed light on mysterious cases from around the globe. And today we're looking at a case with the most insane twist you've ever heard. A case of an internet love triangle and jealousy that turned deadly. But first, if you haven't subscribed to our channel by now, please consider hitting the subscribe and like buttons. Let's take a deep dive into this mystery without further ado. Brian Michael Barrett was born on February 1st, 1984, to parents Dan and Deb Barrett in Williamsville, New York. His two younger brothers, Daniel and Richard, soon followed. Growing up, Brian was a very shy and quiet person. To those who knew him, he was very easygoing and kind. He had an avid passion for sports, a hobby that began at an early age. He even regularly read the newspaper's sports section to keep track of the statistics for all of his favorite teams. He shared his love of sports with his dad and his brothers, with whom he had a close bond. Brian played both baseball and football in high school until a shoulder injury prevented him from returning to the field. In 2002, Brian graduated from Starpoint High School in Pendleton, a rural town in New York near the Canadian border where Brian lived with his family. After completing high school, he decided to get his 2-year degree at Erie Community College. While studying there, he took a part-time job with Dynabraid Corporation in the town of Clarence to pay for his college. Once he finished the degree, he decided to become an industrial arts teacher. With the aspiration of being a teacher, Brian registered at Buffalo State College nearby his home. However, he continued his part-time factory job where he was known as a hard worker. In 2006, at the age of 22, Brian finally started to come out of his shell and even began to exhibit an adventurous streak. He spent his time fishing, camping, skydiving, and trying new things. However, one of the things he was exploring did not include any outdoor stunts. Like many young people, Brian also loved spending time on his computer, sometimes talking to strangers. But nothing could have prepared him for what his online encounters would eventually lead to. On Friday, September 17, 2006, Brian's shift at the Dynabraid power tool plant ended at 10 p.m. After packing up his things, he climbed into his truck to head home. But before he could slip his key into the ignition, someone shot him at close range with a .30 caliber rifle. 3 bullets exploded from the driver's side window, striking him in the left arm and the neck, resulting in instant death. His body was found 2 days later when a coworker spotted his pickup truck in an isolated part of the company parking lot. His lifeless body was still seated in the front seat of his truck. As police began their investigation, they quickly learned about a possible suspect in the slaying. Apparently, Brian's coworkers began telling officials about his supposed online love triangle and the animosity with a coworker of his. To get to the bottom of the story, investigators combed through his online activities. As they dug deeper, a shocking story was unveiled. It was a story of jealousy and betrayal that ended in a tragedy. It all starts with 46-year-old Thomas Montgomery, a Cheektowaga man who was living a regular life with his wife Cindy and their 2 daughters. He worked as a machinist for the Dynabraid Corporation, the same factory where Brian worked. But his life was nothing close to Brian's. For 12 years straight, this man woke up in the morning, then went on to work at the Dynabraid factory. He strapped on his goggles and stood at his machine until the late afternoon, churning out components for power tools. After work, he took his 2 daughters to the local swimming club and walked the family dog, Shadow. Every day, he got up and played the role of a hard-working father and husband. Yet, aside from poker nights with his buddies and the Dynabraid euchre tournament, he enjoyed nothing about his life. At 46, he was trying to overcome the monotony of his daily routine. That might explain why Montgomery, a 46-year-old former Marine with a reddish mustache, bulging gut, and balding head, decided to become someone else. In May of 2005, posing as a young, handsome, Iraq-bound Marine, he entered a teen chat room on the popular game site Pogo.com with the screen name Marine Sniper. Almost instantly, an 18-year-old girl with the screen name Tall Hot Blonde started messaging him, so he decided to pretend he was 18 too. After a few friendly chats, the girl let him know that her real name was Jessie, a softball-playing high school senior from West Virginia. She sent Montgomery photos that lived up to her screen name. In return, Montgomery said his real name was Tommy. Tommy stood 6 foot 2 inches tall, the same height as the 46-year-old man, but the similarities ended there. Tommy had thick red hair, broad shoulders, and big muscles, with a handsome face. He was a black belt in karate, with bullet scars on his left shoulder and right leg portraying his toughness. Montgomery sent Jesse a picture of him in uniform, taken 30 years prior, from the brief time he served in the military. Montgomery also created an elaborate ruse about this persona. As Tommy, he told Jesse that his mother died of cancer when he was 12 and his father was in the military. After living a tough life, he enlisted in the Marines. After a boot camp in June to train as a sniper, he was headed to Iraq. Marine Sniper was nostalgic to Montgomery, reminiscing about the 6 years spent in the Marine as a young man. However, U.S. Marine records showed that although he qualified as a sharpshooter, he never trained as a sniper or saw action. However, the story managed to draw Jesse in. Although their chats started as friends, before long the flirtation became a full-fledged online romance. Jesse kept sending her photos to Montgomery, believing him to be an 18-year-old. Some of those photos were very provocative. Over time, the relationship had evolved and they were engaging in cybersex. To Montgomery, it became more real for him than real life. The feelings seemed to be mutual. Jesse and Tommy started exchanging gifts, phone calls, and love letters. At one point, Jesse even sent a pair of red underwear in the mail as a gift. Although Montgomery knew that the affair was getting serious, he couldn't sever ties with her. Assuming they would never meet, he decided to play cat and mouse. "If I was smart, I would have just ended it. But it was like a drug that I needed every day," Montgomery later said in an interview. As time went on, Jesse and Tommy had settled into a routine, talking by phone between 6:30 and 6:40 a.m., and from 3:30 to 3:40 p.m., when Jesse was led to believe that her Marine love was off-duty. About 8 months after they met online, during Christmas, Tommy proposed marriage and Jesse accepted. All of this without ever meeting in real life. His fantasy did not stop at the computer screen, however. He began telling people at his work about this 18-year-old beautiful girl he was imagining a life with. He told them that he planned to leave his wife and move to West Virginia. And he was not even joking. In a note to himself, he wrote, "On January 2, 2006, Tom Montgomery, 46 years old, ceases to exist and is replaced by an 18-year-old battle-scarred Marine. He's moving to West Virginia to be with the love of his life." While Montgomery seemed to be losing touch with reality, his lies fell apart when his wife, Cindy, learned about the whole ordeal. One day in February 2006, Jesse messaged Montgomery while his daughter happened to be working on the computer. Shocked to see their conversation, the girl alerted her mother. Cindy was already suspicious about his long hours online and his dwindling involvement in their life, and now everything made sense. She also found a bunch of love letters, photos, and mementos from Jesse, including the pair of red panties. To warn her, Cindy sent Jesse a photo of her family with a letter. "Let me introduce you to these people," she wrote. "The man in the center is Tom, my husband since 1989. He's 46 years old." She further advised her, "Do not trust words on a computer. Let this go. You'll only be hurt by a man who has mastered the art of manipulations and lies." With total transparency, she also confronted her husband with the letter. "I cannot believe you're living some sort of bizarre fantasy. If you want to separate, we can. But to continue to lie to me and the kids while she's sending you gifts in the mail is not acceptable." Horrified and heartbroken by this revelation, Jesse immediately broke off the relationship. Calling Montgomery a liar, she said that she hated him and he should be put in jail for this charade. But in her mind, Jessie could not believe it. To make sure, Jessie reached out to one of Montgomery's co-workers, Brian Barrett, who went by the online handle Beefcake. Brian confirmed the story Cindy had told Jessie. Be it revenge or just disgust, Jessie leaned towards Brian for solace. It did not take long before Jessie and Brian developed their own cyber romance. They even went public about their relationship as it became more intimate. She sent Brian the same pictures she previously sent Montgomery. Their budding relationship was all over the internet forum, but it did not stop at that. At his workplace, Brian boasted about his new love interest and revealed the disturbing actions of Montgomery to fellow co-workers. Both Jessie and Brian took to the internet to make sure that everyone knew that he was a liar and basically presented him as a pedophile. Montgomery was furious with this. In the span of a few days, his life was completely falling apart. He went from a respected community member to a pariah. Jessie's affair with Brian added fuel to his jealousy, especially when Jessie showered praise on Brian. He's honest. He wasn't a liar like you were, Jessie told him. He's closer to my age. However, despite her anger, Jessie wasn't able to turn her back completely on Montgomery. After a while, she started messaging him back. I ache to be with Tommy, Jessie expressed. If he existed, I would still be holding him every night and sharing dreams with him every night. She also confessed to Montgomery that she had only been with Brian to take revenge on him. This was like a jackpot to Montgomery. He was being accepted despite being 47 now, and he still had the woman of his dreams. But while they did rekindle the relationship, the affair did not last long. Behind his back, Jessie seemed to be taking up with Brian again. Driven by extreme obsession, rage, and jealousy, Montgomery began to go into a downward spiral. This time, his texts with Jessie were filled with abuse and threats. At one point, he threatened Jessie, saying, Brian will pay in blood. Despite these threats, Jessie did not cease going back and forth between the two men, which would not end well. The final nail in the coffin was when Brian and Jessie decided to meet, something Montgomery never could. Brian was driving down to North Carolina, and on his way back, he asked Jessie to meet him, as he'd be driving very near her house. Although Jessie initially agreed, she canceled at the last minute. But Montgomery, unaware that she'd canceled, was burning from blind rage. After investigators discovered this trove of evidence, they felt confident that they had their man. And if all these marathon chats were not enough to point to Montgomery as the suspect, he told one of his colleagues that he wouldn't be stupid enough to leave shell casings lying around if he were to kill someone, as was the case in Brian's murder. 2 weeks before the slaying, Montgomery had asked that same employee what time Brian got off work. After figuring out that Montgomery had both motive and opportunity to commit the crime, authorities reached his home. Concerned that he was on the run and possibly planning to hurt Jessie, Buffalo authorities contacted the local police in West Virginia to check on Jessie. When officials from the West Virginia Police Department went to Jessie's home, Jessie wasn't home. Instead, Jessie's mother, 45-year-old Mary Schuyler, opened the door. Investigators had no idea they were in for another surprise. Officers noticed that even after they described the situation, Mary was not concerned, but rather calm. They could not believe what she told them next. As the layers of deceit peeled off one by one, it sent chills down detectives' spines. Under pressure, Mary broke down and confessed that neither Montgomery nor Brian ever talked to Jessie. It had been Mary all along. She had taken her daughter's identity and even her email address and entered a teen chat room on Pogo posing as her own daughter. She had also sent provocative pictures to strangers without her daughter's consent. Her daughter, the real Jessie, was completely unaware of her mother's sick fantasies or that there were photos of her scantily clad spreading throughout the cyber world. There was nothing more tragic than to think that the only person who was telling the truth about his identity was the person who would end up losing his life. On November 27, 2006, Montgomery was arrested for the murder of Brian Barrett. he claimed to have gone to a local restaurant and returned home between 10 and 10:10 p.m., before the murder had taken place. However, according to his wife's testimony, he arrived more than half an hour later. Montgomery's mobile records revealed him to be in the vicinity of Dinah Braid at the time of the murder. Upon questioning, Montgomery claimed that he had to retrieve his lunch from his car, as his peaches would have spoiled otherwise. A peach pit was retrieved next to Brian's truck, which later revealed Montgomery's DNA. A leather cartridge case covered with dog hairs was found in the same area, which was suspected to belong to Shadow. The police uncovered a photo of Montgomery's gun cabinet containing a .30 caliber rifle, which was missing from the cabinet after the murder. Montgomery had no idea that Mary had conned him at the time of questioning. Blood drained from his face once he learned that he threw his life away for a lie. Prosecutors in Buffalo tried to charge Mary Schuyler on any possible count, but it was concluded that she might have crossed moral and ethical lines, but not the legal ones. In September 2006, Montgomery pleaded guilty to first-degree manslaughter in the death of 22-year-old Brian Barrett. In November 2007, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Lots of petitions were filed by Brian's family for a law to be enacted in New York so that Mary's actions are made illegal in the future, but all of them were in vain. Brian Barrett was murdered by a person pretending to be someone he was not, obsessing over another person pretending to be something she was not. It's saddening to come to terms with the fact that misuse of social media by two fully grown adults resulted in the death of an innocent 22-year-old who was just beginning his life. Do you think that anyone would have been hurt had the real world not collided with the pair's middle-aged fantasies? Share your thoughts about this tragic case in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more enchanting stories like this.